Welcome to Voices of History and to our series, The Conquest. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the most dramatic and, frankly, world-altering collisions in all of human history. So the big question we're tackling is this. How did a tiny force, fewer than 600 men, manage to challenge an entire empire of millions? We're going to follow the audacious trail of Hernán Cortés, but we're going to peel back the simple labels of hero or villain to see him as a political operator, playing a game that was way more complex than the legends usually let on. You see, our story kicks off not with some royal blessing or grand send-off, but with a pretty brazen act of rebellion. Cortés was this incredibly ambitious, incredibly astute guy. He knew exactly what he wanted. And that ambition, it put him on a direct collision course with his boss, the governor of Cuba, Diego Velázquez. Cortés wasn't just another captain following orders. No way. From the very beginning, he was playing his own game. And this is where you can see this huge gap between what he was supposed to do and what he was actually planning. His official orders were pretty clear. Explore the coast, do some trading, and report back. But Cortés, he practically snuck out of Cuba like a fugitive. His ships packed not for trade, but for a much grander and, completely illegal plan for conquest. So how does he get away with this? Well, he pulls off this absolutely brilliant legal maneuver. He lands on the coast of Mexico and immediately founds a town. By creating a town, he's created a new legal entity. He then resigns his post to the town council, which is of course filled with his own loyal men. And what do? They immediately turn around and reappoint him as their leader. But this time, he's not answering to the governor. No, now he answers directly to the King of Spain. It was a masterstroke of political theater that legally severed his ties to his furious commander back in Cuba. Okay, so he's a rebel with legal cover. But there's a huge problem. How in the world do you conquer a land when you can't speak a single word of the local languages? Well, this is where Cortés gets his first massive, almost unbelievable stroke of luck. He finds the keys to unlock communication. First, on the island of Cozumel, his men literally stumble upon Jerónimo de Aguilar, a Spaniard who'd been shipwrecked for years and was now totally fluent in Maya. I mean, what are the odds? Then, a little later, after a battle in Tabasco, he's given a gift of 20 enslaved women. And in that group was one person who would completely change the course of history, a woman named Malinali. Malinali, who the Spanish would later baptize as Doña Marina, was actually a noblewoman by birth who had been sold into slavery. Her tragic past gave her this unique and powerful skill set. She was fluent in both Maya and Nahuatl, the language of the mighty Mexica Empire. She was the final, crucial link, the missing piece of the puzzle that Cortés desperately needed. So now, check this out. With these two people, Cortés creates this incredible communication chain. It worked like this. Cortés would speak in Spanish to Aguilar. Aguilar translates that into Maya for Malinali, and then Malinali translates from Maya into Nahuatl for the Mexica lords. This little three-step process suddenly opened up the entire world to him. He could negotiate, he could make threats, he could gather intelligence, all because of this linguistic bridge he'd just found. All right, so now he's armed with the power of words. But his next challenge is going to be all about military might. Because he's marching his tiny army straight into the territory of one of the most powerful unconquered states in the region, the Republic of Tlaxcala. Now, you might think, okay, the Tlaxcalans were sworn enemies of the Mexica, so they must have been happy to see Cortés, right? Wrong. Not at all. They saw these strange newcomers as invaders, plain and simple, and they met them with absolutely ferocious force. I mean, just look at these numbers. Cortés's small force was facing just overwhelming odds. The Tlaxcalans came at them with massive, highly organized armies in a series of incredibly brutal, bloody battles. The Spanish and their few coastal allies were pushed right to the very brink of being completely wiped out. And don't for a second think this was some kind of cakewalk. Mesoamerican warfare was devastatingly effective. Tlaxcalan warriors used weapons like the atlal, a spear thrower that could launch darts with enough force to punch right through armor. And then there was the maco wheel, a fearsome wooden club lined with razor-sharp obsidian blades, sharp enough to decapitate a horse. Even the Spanish horses, their greatest psychological weapon, were getting killed in these fights. So even as their warriors fought like lions, the Tlaxcalan leadership was having a serious debate. On one side, you had the young general, Xicotincat, who was all for fighting to the last man. But on the other, you had an elder lord, Maxicatzitzin, who saw the terrible cost of the war and argued for a different path, an alliance against their true ancient enemy, the Mexica. In the end, his view won out. So now, with thousands of powerful new Tlaxcalan allies marching beside him, Cortés heads for Cholula. This was a sacred city, a major center allied with Moctezuma. And it's here that one of the absolute darkest, most brutal episodes of the entire conquest is about to unfold. The thing about Cholula is what really happened there is still fiercely debated. The historical sources actually contradict each other, which leaves us with this really dark, really murky picture. Was it a calculated, preemptive strike, or was it something much more cynical? So, Theory 1, the preemptive strike. This is the official Spanish version, the one Cortés himself told. He claimed his interpreters uncovered an elaborate plot by Moctezuma to trap and annihilate them inside the city. According to this version, the massacre was a horrific but necessary act of survival. But then there's Theory 2, the Tlaxcalan ploy. This theory suggests that the Tlaxcalans, who absolutely despised the Cholulans, expertly manipulated Cortés. They may have fed him false information about an ambush, essentially tricking the Spanish into fighting their battle for them. In this scenario, Cortés solidifies his new alliance by bathing it in the blood of his allies' enemies. But whatever the real motive was, the outcome was an undisputed horror. Cortés gathered the city's nobles into the main square, and then his men and their Tlaxcalan allies just unleashed on them. Thousands of largely unarmed people were slaughtered, sending a shockwave of absolute terror across the empire. So now, with a path cleared by a wild mix of diplomacy and sheer terror, Cortés and his army are finally on the doorstep. They're approaching their ultimate prize, the magnificent, unbelievable island capital of the Mexica, Tenochtitlan. And the sight of it, well, it absolutely stunned the conquistadors. One of the soldiers, Bernal Diaz del Castillo, wrote that they were amazed, that it was like something out of a fantasy novel, like the enchantments, with great towers and temples just rising straight out of the water. It was a city bigger and more ordered than any they had ever seen in their lives. As they get closer, they're met by this incredible procession. It's Moctezuma's envoys, led by his nephew, carried in a spectacular litter. Attendants are literally sweeping the very ground in front of him. The whole scene was just dripping with power and pageantry, a final, stunning display of imperial might before the fateful meeting with the emperor himself. And so, just picture it. There they are, at the gates of this incredible city. A rebel captain acting against orders, an enslaved noblewoman who became an indispensable translator, and thousands of warriors from a rival nation. This unbelievable journey, fueled by rebellion, by sheer luck, and by brutal strategy, had brought them right to the very heart of an empire. But here's the thing. Their arrival was not the end of the story. Oh no. The conquest had only just begun. To follow the rest of this incredible history, be sure to subscribe to Voices of History. Discover what they didn't tell you about the meeting of two worlds.